What's the most disturbing unsolved mystery in your local area? Story 1, Platt, South Dakota, which is approximately 1 hour away from my hometown, had a house fire. It was tragic enough that the entire family, parents, and 4 children, died in it. What a tragedy, they thought at first, but soon they began to suspect that the father had opened fire on the house. His children, because each of them bore bullet wounds, and then ended himself. Then the news came out, and a fantastic news anchor looked into it. As her investigation progressed, she learned that the parents had been fraudulently taking funds meant to support Native American education from an organization in which they had participated. Whistleblower stole $1 million. Subsequently, law enforcement officials examined fragmented security footage from a tiny rural town and discovered a car making late-night trips to and from the property. Serious crime? The aforementioned newscaster supposedly received death threats and cut off all coverage just as she was about to solve the damn thing. She showed a lot of interest in it, and they never really explained why they stopped investigating. Thus, it must be true. Nobody has mentioned it since then. There's a lot going on in this tale, but I tried my best to summarize everything. A Crime Junkies episode might be on it, so I should look for it. Story 2, a classmate of mine vanished into the forest. On it, you can find a Crime Watch special every day. Her name was Molly Miller. It was at that moment that I realized she had vanished. I thought she was gorgeous at school, blue eyes, sleek black hair, and I felt it was wonderful that she welcomed me when I was new. The following year, I relocated to Texas and, by chance, saw her likeness on a Walmart bulletin board. Even though I thought, that looks like Molly, it turned out to be someone else. No one has heard from her in the past decade, and questions remain unanswered. Story 3, rumor has it that our town is home to an emu farm. The issue is that no one has noticed it, yet we continue to discover emus in unexpected locations. Since 2013, I have successfully spotted 11 emus. Since we knew someone who knew someone who knew someone else, we can only conclude that someone must own an emu farm. Possibly there is a farm, according to everyone we've met. I mean, surely something must be there. On a farm, amid the livestock, lives our nearest random residential emu, which is 4 houses down. The lovely people around here are taking good care of it, mostly because we're at a loss as to what to do with it, now that it just won't go away. The emu is now known as Edith. Story 4, just off the major roadway leading to Myrtle Beach, near a fire station, sat the lifeless body of a young woman. She arrived in Manitoba from Florida, where she was supposed to be visiting her dad, but they never met. The staff at the scooter rental business said she was acting strange and thus refused to give her service. Sheridan explained to her mom that she was shoeless. She had just driven around 10 hours to see her father, but for reasons that remain a mystery, she turned around and returned home without ever seeing him. After she still hadn't shown up, her dad finally contacted the police. Her wrecked vehicle was discovered on a barren dirt road close to my boyhood home, about an hour outside of Myrtle, right next to the fire station. According to eyewitnesses, a man fled the flaming automobile in an SUV with another male who was presumably involved in the crime. The police have stated that she fell from the training tower behind the station, which is their official cause of death, but the whole thing is so strange. There are so many red flags. I pray they can provide her family some solid answers. Everything about it feels off, like a puzzle where none of the pieces quite fit. A young woman drives nearly 10 hours to see her dad, then suddenly turns around without explanation, barefoot. Refused service for acting strangely. Then found dead behind a fire station, her car wrecked, and witnesses claiming they saw men fleeing the scene. And yet, the official report says she fell from a training tower. That's not just suspicious, it's screaming for deeper investigation. Story 5, a number of digits were discovered outside a neighbor's residence in 2012. Someone wants to convey some message. That's the only way to put it. That story is the most bizarre of the few that I have. Further stories, please. A house down the street from mine used to hold poker games. I'm not sure if it was legal, and someone supposedly lost a lot of money there, so they decided to take it all back. The owner charged at him when he broke in, and he ended up getting stabbed. This is my friend's story, not mine. At the age of 4, a man approached her at the park, informed her that he had pups in his van, and she was invited to come meet them. We can probably all see where this is leading. Luckily, her fear of dogs prevented her from being caught by him. Despite her harrowing ordeal, this man was never apprehended. Story 6. How is my neighbor doing? An elderly woman and her large family of adopted children with special needs are my next door neighbors. Her terminal colon cancer diagnosis came at a sad time. 3 nights ago, her residence was visited by a large number of police cars and ambulances. I was at fencing practice. I wasn't present. The house remained peaceful for a few days, but then she heard the sound of a car pulling up and pulling away. It could be her child's caretaker or a repeat customer at her massage clinic. The events of that day remain a mystery to all of us. Neither of us is brave enough to go ask her children if she passed away. Story 7. Several teenage girls from New England went missing in the 1970s. A large number of females, most of whom had blonde hair and blue eyes, went missing. Only a few bodies were ever recovered, and they never caught the guy responsible. Though there were a few prison confessions to it, and many believe he was a carny that did his assassinations while traveling with a circus around the East Coast. Lisa White, a classmate of my mom's, was one of the missing girls. Her corpse was never located. My mom did recall a pretty scary incident that took place a few weeks before Lisa disappeared, where she was followed by a couple in a car on her way home from school who tried to coax her to accept a ride, which in those days was kind of odd considering most kids didn't take the bus. If those individuals were responsible, I wouldn't be surprised because my mom was also the type of girl with blonde hair and blue eyes when I was a kid. Story 8. The person known as Kyron Horman has vanished. Surely you're familiar with the name if you happen to be in the Pacific Northwest. Despite widespread suspicion that his stepmother was involved, no clues as to his whereabouts were ever uncovered when he vanished in 2010. A couple other billboards have popped up in recent years, and it seems like they still host events. Eventually, I pray they discover his body and the family may finally rest. Immediately behind the school where Kyron was last seen is a huge and deep forest. I can't help but wonder if he got lost in the woods after straying from the school and eventually succumbed to natural causes like exposure or an accident. The sheer size of the forest and its proximity to the school, which sits essentially on top of it, can only be grasped with the help of a topographical map. Story 9. At Happy Ralph's in St. Catharines, a number of animals were hurt in June 2010. It was reported that 4 tiny animals were ended and around 6 animals were shot with pellets and BB guns. I still haven't heard anything about whether or not the perpetrators were apprehended. Picnics, games of hide and seek in the field and wooded area, and strolls around the lake were some of my favorite childhood activities in the park. A summertime favorite was the petting zoo. When it all transpired, it was shocking. They appear to have made significant improvements to the security of the enclosures, yet they still keep some animals there. This one really hurts, not just because of what happened, but because of where it happened. Happy Ralph's wasn't just a park, it was a piece of childhood, the kind of place tied to warm memories, picnics, games, lazy walks, and that wholesome joy of being around animals. So when something this dark happens in such an innocent place, it shakes you. Story 10. Problem addressed in theory, but with much debate. Ben Smart and Olivia Hope in New Zealand. 2 teenagers aged 18 and 18 who celebrated New Year's Eve at a lodge accessible only by boat. Following this, they were last seen boarding a yacht, and no one saw them again. Officers zeroed in on Scott Watson and filed charges even though his yacht had absolutely nothing in common with the description. Despite a mountain of evidence suggesting he was innocent, he was convicted and has subsequently spent time behind bars. Nobody has ever discovered a body. Story 11. Mora Murray hails from Hanson, Massachusetts. She had notified her teachers via email that she would be absent from class due to a family funeral. Edit. Neglected to clarify that there was actually no death. She had verified this with her relatives. She was a college student at the time. She went to New Hampshire in her battered automobile, knowing she shouldn't have driven that far. Her car was recovered on the side of the road in a snowbank, and nobody has seen her since. They had a lot of shared acquaintances and played sports together when my mom was in her class. Her case has been the subject of numerous podcasts and other media, and the FBI has only just begun investigating it. A rag was stuck in her tailpipe, There were rumors that the police chief was involved, the bus driver who supposedly stopped to help but continued driving to call for help because there was no service, etc., etc. And there are a lot of important, strange details that I didn't include because I was too lazy to add them all. She also had too much alcohol in her car for one person, a really tragic and intriguing case. Her whereabouts continue to be a mystery, and many individuals are trying to find out more information. Story 12. I was in nursery when my mom started working at my school in the mid 1980s. She was in a different class than me. She consistently traversed the heath in order to reach the school. My family had a passing acquaintance with a local young girl who disappeared around 2 weeks ago. The last known location of this girl was over the heath. The route Mama walked was bustling with people walking their dogs and golfing, so she didn't think much of it, especially because she practically grew up there, and it was midsummer. Mama went to work one day shortly after the disappearance. However, she stopped halfway to school because she felt the creeping sensation that one gets when one is being watched, as she explained to me many years later. As she glanced back, she beheld a towering person clad in motorcycle leathers and a helmet perched atop the little slope she had just descended. Although she was unable to make out his features, she felt anxious knowing that he had been observing her for a while. Mama mentioned that she felt he might have traveled through a thickly wooded region opposite to the hill, and she found it odd because she hadn't seen him come down the hill. That might clarify why she hadn't laid eyes on him earlier. Story 13. There was a girl whose body was discovered in my hometown in the 1960s. For 30 years, she went unrecognized, referred to only as Tent Girl, due to the fact that she wore a tent. I pass by her gravestone every time I take the dogs for a walk. The whole community chipped in to get it, and it's located near my mom's house. The inscription reads Tent Girl, and on the reverse side, it features an engraving of their interpretation of her likeness. Her family commissioned a new tombstone to be erected beneath it after she was identified. Since her husband is no longer with us, the locals will never be able to put an end to the mystery. There's something deeply haunting about the story of the Tent Girl, not just because of how tragically her life ended, but because for 30 years she remained nameless, known only by what she was found in. Imagine that, reduced to a label, a mystery etched in stone where a name should have been, and yet there's something strangely beautiful in how your community responded. They didn't forget her. They honored her. Strangers chipped in for a gravestone, carved her imagined face into stone, and gave her the dignity she was denied in life, even without knowing who she was. Story 14. Erica Baker, a resident of Kettering, Ohio, has gone missing. Nearby Indian Rifle Park, 9-year-old Erica Baker walked her aunt's dog on February 7, 1999. Shortly after 4 p.m., two bystanders noticed her seated on a park bench close to the park's pond. Erica was last seen at this location. A little while later, the dog would approach the witnesses while still attached to its leash. However, they likely assumed it had just gotten loose and summoned animal control to collect it. Her mother contacted the authorities and they began looking for Erica because she did not come home by the time nightfall arrived. They searched the area extensively, but came up empty-handed. Although the bloodhounds detected Erica's scent on a children's hoodie that was located close to a town 14 miles away, her family insisted that the garment did not actually belong to her. The police eventually found evidence that a van driven by a lady called Jan Franks struck and ended Erica. Due to attorney-client confidentiality, Jan's lawyer has declined to divulge any information that Jan may have shared with her regarding the matter before her death in 2001. Even though Jan's husband had waived attorney-client privilege in accordance with Ohio law, Jan's lawyer still refused to answer any questions and was subsequently convicted of contempt and imprisoned. Story 15. The UFO Case of Todmorden, close call in West Yorkshire. Leaving his home in Tingley, West Yorkshire, 56-year-old coal miner Zygmunt Adamski went shopping on June 6, 1980. After that, he departed. Near the town of Todmorden, 20 miles from his home, his lifeless body was discovered atop a 10-foot coal mound on June 9th. Adamski was wearing a suit, but his watch, wallet, and shirt were all missing, according to local Bobby Allen Godfrey, who was sent to investigate. PC Godfrey said that Adamski's hair was roughly cut, and even though he had been gone for a few days, his beard had only grown 1 day's worth. Adamski, according to the young officer, also had some unexplained burns on his shoulders, neck, and head. James Turnbull, the coroner, verified that forensic experts were unable to identify the strange ointment used to heal some of the burns. Adamski appeared terrified, according to Godfrey's subsequent assessment. According to PC Godfrey, who spoke to the media, alien abduction of Adamski was a real possibility. He claimed to be receptive to new ideas. I am not ruling it out. Still unsolved is the mystery surrounding the death of the Lofthouse colliery worker. The possibility that the KGB had put an end to Adamski's life was a wild rumor that circulated at the time. Another theory put him dead at the peak of the coal stack after he was struck by ball lightning and lost his way. However, for many, the only plausible explanation was that Adamski had been ended while on his way to the stores after coming face to face with extraterrestrial aliens. The town of Todmorden was back in the news 5 months after the horrific body of Adamski was recovered. At the center of the storm this time was none other than PC Godfrey. Godfrey was taken aback when he was sent out at 5 in the morning to handle a report regarding loose animals on a housing estate. He asserted that an unusual flying object had stopped him in his tracks. According to Godfrey, the celestial body was a diamond-shaped revolving vessel that was 20 feet tall and 14 feet broad. Story 16. When I was a kid, my town's youths would travel to an abandoned quarry to get drunk and goof around away from grown-ups. The quarry had run out of materials decades earlier. Everyone in the little town knew that youngsters went there, but nobody did anything to stop them. 2 boys' bodies were discovered there around 10 years ago. The scene was reportedly horrific. The owner's firm showed up, erected new gates and cameras to keep people out, began patrolling the area, and promptly tore down all of the old structures. Almost overnight, the whole place was surrounded by cops. Curiously, not a single person, including the police, the business, and the parents of the deceased teens, denied that their children would visit that location. It was a hoax created by reporters to sell the story, they all said, and they had no idea any youngsters went there. Even though everyone knew that kids went there, it was still crazy, as well as having been regulars for many years. They continue to vehemently reject the idea that it was ever the local hangout and have never learned what happened to the kids. Story 17. Michelle Parker vanished into thin air a decade ago. The young mother of 3 went missing without a trace while she and her ex-fiancé were appearing on an episode of Divorce Court. After breaking up, she threw her engagement ring at him during an argument and it landed on a hotel balcony below. Since the ring was expensive, he decided to sue her on TV. Subsequently, her vehicle and phone were located, but the footage showing their journey was missing. Despite his shady history, the ex-fiancé had a good alibi. Regardless, no one has ever been able to locate her body, and no one has ever been able to pin down exactly what happened to her. Story 18. I was around 10 years old when, while I lived in Hurricane, Utah, folks started talking about something at the end of summer 1987. Although I can no longer remember the name, there was a pizzeria that I would visit from time to time. Animated figures served as the centerpiece of the entire establishment. Also, I believe it inspired a virtual reality game. No one ever learned for sure what happened, but I heard that an animatronic bit off someone's frontal lobe, despite the fact that many assumed it was one that I was unfamiliar with, which was called the Mangle. However, no one can say for sure who did it, and the establishment shut down soon after. Apart from one unfortunate worker, I have no idea who else will find out. This story feels like it stepped right out of a horror game, and maybe that's what makes it so unsettling. A seemingly innocent pizzeria filled with animatronics, just like something from a childhood memory. Except this one ends in a gruesome rumor about someone getting their frontal lobe bitten off. Whether it's true or just local legend, the imagery alone is chilling. Animatronics are already kind of creepy with their jerky movements and dead-eyed stares, but the idea that one might have actually attacked someone, that takes it to another level. Story 19, right near the shore of Lake Ontario is where I call home. With a combined population of nearly 1 million, the 3 major Canadian cities of Hamilton, Burlington, and Oakville surround the local area. A massive boom occurred at about 2 in the morning in the summer of 2005. Auto alarms were triggered by its deafening volume. After looking into it, the local media determined that it wasn't a meteor, the local refinery, or a jet that had broken the sound barrier. No explosives were detected. However, the fire department and police received reports of a boom and even heard it themselves. Some hypotheses were advanced, such as the possibility of changing tectonic plates beneath the lake, but no definitive evidence was ever found. I am unable to articulate it verbally. The last time I heard planes smash over the sound barrier, it was much louder. There was no roaring prior, just a single lengthy boom. The boom's rumble reverberated off the adjacent cliff as well. Nothing like this has ever occurred before, and no one knows why. Story 20. Leverett, Khloe, and Daniel Gage. When the siblings moved in with their grandparents in 2012, they were 7 and 9 years old, respectively. Tragically, the grandparents, along with the family dog and pet bird, perished in the house fire. No one ever located the kids' bodies. In order to ensure that no detail was overlooked, specialists were summoned to sift through the rubble. Under no circumstances. Even after all these years, we still don't know if they perished in the fire or if they're somewhere safe. Since no one would have relinquished their children without a struggle, their mother maintains the hope that they are alive and suspects that the house was burned down on purpose. Story 21. Somehow, semi-exotic animals keep appearing on our rural roads. Since I am a Floridian, some of the things we have witnessed may seem strange to locals. I know I'm way behind the times, but this has been happening for years. On occasion, we've seen strange birds since I was a little kid. Envision a group of male peacocks leisurely strolling along a narrow gravel lane. Wildfowl. A wide variety of things. Not something too outrageous just yet. But there was a capybara that lived on our road for a bit. I understand your point of view. A capybara, though, that was for sure. It was seen by several, and its tracks were visible all the way down our driveway that ends at a lake. Buying exotic animals and releasing them into the wild is a mystery to me, but it adds a splash of color every so then. Story 22. Concerned about the whereabouts of Kyle Flechman in Charlotte, North Carolina. After work one night, he hit the town for a few drinks. He and his companions visited 2 different watering holes. He left his jacket, which contained his money, at the second bar. His phone was still in his possession, and there are recordings of him leaving the bar and making numerous unsuccessful midnight phone calls to loved ones. Regrettably, he was lonesome and nobody saw him again, with the exception of one cab, I believe. The police located a hotspot for drug trades after following every piece of evidence they could find, including camera footage and phone records. A neighboring construction area was marked by the police dog as the location he went. The lack of sufficient evidence to search meant that they could never halt the building, thanks to certain stupid legislation and problems with obtaining a warrant. Everyone here, including his parents, is very certain that he is hiding out under that no-die apartment building, and nobody will do anything about it. In case you were wondering, the answer is yes. This is a common occurrence on true crime podcasts. Many details are also available online for your perusal. Since I merely relied on my memories, you shouldn't take my words at face value. Story 23, I must admit, I am intrigued by this one. There are a lot of houses in my neighborhood, which is like a country club, but there are also a lot of rundown, seedy parts right next to it. Some individuals thought it was safe to come here at night to walk behind children, so the story went. But there was actually an older male. At approximately 11 o'clock in the evening, one of my brother's friends was making his way home from work when he had the unsettling sensation that someone was tailing him. Curious, he turned around and saw the head of a person peering out from behind a house he had passed earlier. He was understandably terrified, but he managed to capture the terrifying scene on camera and send it to my brother. Thankfully, he made it home safely. However, later that week, news broke that a teenage girl had been abducted while out with her friends. What's even worse is that her friends failed to notice anything was wrong until she just stopped talking. This is the kind of story that stays with you, not just because it's creepy, but because it feels too real. The contrast between a nice country club style neighborhood and the nearby rundown areas already sets a tense backdrop. You expect safety, but the shadow of something not quite right looms just close enough to invade it. The idea that someone, maybe this older man, was following kids or lurking in the dark isn't just unsettling, it's predatory. The details about your brother's friend catching the figure on camera, that adds a whole other layer. When people capture something disturbing in the moment, there's no time to process, just raw fear. And the fact that he did make it home safely almost makes the story feel like a near miss, like fate just barely leaned in his favor.